What's going on, and welcome to the NBA DFS Q&A show. My name is Tom Vecchio. I'll be here for the next 30 minutes taking your questions about tonight's NBA slate. As always, this is every Wednesday at 4 p.m. You can find it on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook pages. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Also at 6 p.m. tonight, right here in the same spot, we have a Super Bowl live prop show going over all the props. There will be a number of different hosts and analysts on that show. So be sure to tune in right here at 6 p.m. for the Super Bowl prop show for this obviously upcoming game. Let's hop into tonight's NBA slate, and literally minutes before we are coming on the air, we are getting all of this injury news for specifically some of the West Coast games. The one important note, at least in the East Coast game, is that Levert is available to make his Cavs debut, which is obviously important because we're waiting on the status of Darius Garland. And then we get this slew of injury news from the West Coast, where we have D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, Pat Beverly, Naz Reid, Josh Okogie, Taurean Prince, all questionable for the Timberwolves. And then all of a sudden we have LeBron James and Russell Westbrook, who are both listed as questionable and will be game time decisions. So this changes things massively, where there could be immense sources of value for the Timberwolves. And if we have Westbrook and LeBron as game time decisions, this could put a massive priority on Anthony Davis. So let's jump in. We already got some questions, starting off with Grim on YouTube. Thoughts on using CJ Elby tonight? Big fan of CJ Elby. I wrote him up as one of my value plays on numberfire.com. Obviously seeing an expanded role for the Trailblazers due to trades, due to injuries, et cetera, et cetera. He was in the starting lineup last night. That's where he should be tonight. 34 minutes last night, 31.8 FanDuel points. Love him in the spot. This game has a 224 over-under, right? 223.5 over-under versus the Lakers. I think that there's a good spot. Huge pace-up spot for Portland. They are 20th in the league in pace, and the Lakers are number one. So pace-up spot, weak defense from the Lakers. They're not playing a whole lot of it this year. A lot of minutes locked in for him. So big fan of Elby tonight. I certainly will be going to him as a solid value option. Born to Laugh on YouTube is saying, is there a way to use Vucevic, LaMelo, and DeRozan all in one lineup and still have enough for Steph Curry? So obviously you're going to be targeting this game because we have a massive 237-point over-under and a 2-point spread, which honestly shapes up to be just a fantastic fantasy environment. So you want LaMelo and DeRozan and Vooch all from this game and still have salary for Steph. So if you lock in those 4 stars, you're left with 4,300 remaining. 4,300, 5 players left. So if we get some of the value with, players like Elby and Justice Winslow, who again should be popular, 4,500 remaining per player, I think that's doable. I obviously can't show you a full lineup, but 4,500 per player with 3 spots left, locking in 4 stars, going a full stars and scrubs build. I love that. As I said on today's podcast, Vucevic is one of my favorite players on the entire slate. And then DeRozan is the cover boy for this, for the thumbnail on this video. So I'm a big fan of DeRozan. Just the shot volume we are seeing from him is unbelievable as of late. Extremely high. Yes, we do have some of these games without Zach LaVine. LaVine returned in their most recent game. He still took 27 field goal attempts, getting enough done when it comes to the peripheral category. So to answer your question, yes, you can get 4 stars into your lineup, find some value out there, and you're still in the spot with 4,500 per player remaining, where you can find a few more value plays under 4,000 or under 4,500. And you're in a good spot. So I am totally on board with that. DJ is asking me, any love for Damian Jones, Chimezie Metu, and PJ Washington? Totally. We saw Chimezie Metu, I believe he started the second half, if I remember correctly, last night against playing the Timberwolves again, against the Timberwolves because Mo Harkless went out. So yes, on Chimezie Metu. Damian Jones, also a candidate, especially if we're going to be seeing the secondary players from the Timberwolves, if they have all their starters listed as out. Those depth players for the Timberwolves could be in there. I think we're going to be in for another back and forth game as we saw last night. And then, of course, PJ Washington stepping into the starting lineup because Gordon Hayward is out this game as a 237 points over under, right? 237. 237, and this game's up at 235. So on board with all these players, and really none of them are overly expensive. Damian Jones, 5,500, Tremezzi with 243. You obviously have to decide between them because they're both listed as centers. And then PJ Washington is 40 and 100 for PJ Washington. So all of these players are in play. As I've said before, when it comes to general lineup construction, I try and narrow down the value plays that I'm going for on a nightly basis. Having a good pool of value plays, prioritizing a number of star players, and then making sure I cap and limit the exposures to anyone else that gets filtered through the optimizer, where I don't want to be overexposing myself to potentially players from this Toronto Oklahoma City game. It's got a 204 over under. While some of the options in having a few shares of some of the value plays on the Thunder or going to Pascal Siakam or Van Fleet is great, this game ultimately is a full 2 steps behind some of these other games that have significantly higher over-unders. So on board with all the players in the higher over-under games. You're saying Doug McDermott too. McDermott's okay overall, in my opinion. We know what we're going to be getting from him. We rarely see ceiling games from him. If you're looking for, if you're looking for someone at that salary, 3,800 at power forward, small forward, Justice Winslow's just a bit more expensive. I would prefer to go to him. And honestly, I'd prefer Elby just from, the usage, the shot volume ahead of McDermott. So, I would take Elby and Justice Winslow ahead of Doug McDermott. And, realistically, I would say we could get Talen Horton-Tucker as a starter, but we won't know that for the 10 p.m. start for the Lakers out in Portland, considering this is an East Coast game for McDermott. So, yeah, you'd have to decide early where you'd want to go. And for me, it would probably be Justice Winslow, just taking him for that. Michael on YouTube is saying, do you like Levert only if Garland is ruled out? No, I like Garland. Even if Garland is in, I like going to Levert as well, because we know that the usage overall for the Cavaliers is still going to be there for him. We obviously have to account for him joining the lineup. Let's see. Markkanen is out. Where are the big ones? Where's Colin Sexton is off the court? Let's just take off 2 of the main players. So we know that obviously we're going to see high usage from Mobley and Garland and Kevin Love when he comes off the bench. And of course, Ricky Rubio not there anymore. To answer your question, yes, I like Levert. I think that they're going to make it a point to get him the ball, even if Garland is there. They operated fine when Garland and Sexton were on the court. There's no reason that they can't operate totally normally in their offense when Levert and Garland are there. They traded for him for a reason. They want him in the offense. So I'm going to be going to Levert with or without Garland tonight. It's a pace-up spot for Cleveland. They're 29th in the league, and San Antonio's staying up at 6th. So it's a great matchup overall. It's only a 5-point spread, 5.5-point spread. I'm on board with Levert. I probably like him even more if Garland is ruled in, because if that means he's going to be less popular, I want to be going to him even more, having more exposure. Jeff on Facebook is asking, no, for that football season is obviously ending. Grim is saying, do you like Murray with Garland, Levert, and Mobley in the Cavs Spurs game, all in the same lineup? Okay. All in the same lineup for Murray, Garland, if he plays, Levert, and Mobley. I like that. I think that will help make your lineups a little bit different, because overall, getting heavy exposure to those players, I think, will be a little bit behind the Chicago and Charlotte game, and then some of these West Coast games that potentially have, some value. So loading up on this game, which could certainly stay close, I like that idea. We obviously know the triple-double upside from Murray is always going to be there. If you want to lock in Mobley to start, personally, I prefer playing Mobley at the power forward position just to leave as much flexibility as I can, specifically getting to players that are center only. A player like Karl-Anthony Towns or Embiid or Jokic whenever they happen to be on the slate, or Vucevic. I prefer going to Mobley at power forward. And then getting to Garland, if he plays as well, I think is totally fine. 8,100, you're left with 5,700. You take some value with small forward, with Elby, with Winslow. 6,200 remaining, totally viable lineup. Do you like Nurk if he's not traded tonight? Nurkic is in trade rumors. That would be news to me for the Bulls. I have not seen any of them. Yes, if there are trade rumors for players, you obviously have to keep that in mind. Oh, Nurkic from Portland, excuse me. If he's going to be traded, you'd have to leave yourself an out when it comes to lineup construction, because he's in a West Coast game. Like, you have to have a viable pivot, and that would be at $7,700. Nurkic, it's tough to have a natural pivot away from him for the center position because we're only dealing with a 6-game slate, and none of these options around him are going to be playing because these are all East Coast games. So you'd have to leave yourself an out to possibly get up to Karl-Anthony Towns, where you take the extra salary and then upgrade a different position. So yes, the trade deadline is tomorrow. There could be players pulled out of games. So if you're going to be planning on playing Nurkic, you have to leave yourself an out in case he's traded and obviously not going to be playing. When it comes to some of the player props on tonight's slate, I took the over on Evan Mobley. His points, rebounds, assists combined, that's sitting at 26.5, 25.5. For Mobley, 26.5. I took the over on that. Obviously, very little juice is obviously great. I also took the Cavs on the spread, 5.5 points, and I took the Bulls, -2. I think the Bulls are in a spot to rebound. A couple of losses for them in a row. This is a winnable matchup for them going up against Charlotte, losing to Phoenix, losing to the 76ers on back-to-back days. Obviously, tough matchups. They have Levine back. They need to win this game against Charlotte. Only 2-point spread. So I took the Bulls, the Cavs, and the over on Mobley PRA. DJ's asking thoughts on the shocking Halliburton deal, and it just came up that the Kings are keeping Barnes. Yeah, learning that players are being kept by teams is also important as we close out today's slate. Thoughts on the Halliburton deal? I think I'm in line with everyone else, where I was staggered when it happened, or where I had to double check that it was the actual real Woj account and that it wasn't a fake account, that the Kings were getting rid of Halliburton and adding another big man when they already have like 8 of them. So I was absolutely shocked. Malik Monk or Davion Mitchell tonight? DJ is also asking. I like Davion Mitchell's game. Like, I like what he brings. And if he's going to be in the starting lineup moving forward for the Kings, because they obviously made some trades, no Halliburton there, I'm going to be on board with him specifically in this game environment. I would like Malik Monk a lot if we knew that Westbrook and LeBron James were ruled out. So it's possible to look to your lineups and say, okay, I want Malik Monk. And if we do see him ruled out, if we do see LeBron and Westbrook ruled out, can I take more shares of Malik Monk instead of Davion Mitchell? Like, that's certainly an option if you're looking to have some, guard exposure that way. So if I have to choose right now, it's Davion Mitchell, but I would actually take Monk for the 3-point upside if LeBron is ruled out. Green on YouTube is asking, is that a better play than Elby? You're asking about Malik Monk, or because Mitchell obviously doesn't have the same positional eligibility. I like Malik Monk a lot tonight for that 3-point ability going up against Portland if LeBron is out. I like Elby, overall for his salary, sub $4,000 in the starting lineup for Portland, probably playing another 30-plus minutes. Should easily be exceeding fantasy value. Is that a play compared to Talen Horton-Tucker? Like THT at 3,700, the minutes are okay. The production is never super consistent for him. That's where I have an issue. Now, if you're playing both of them, let's say you make a lineup, right, where you have Talen Horton-Tucker, where you actually have Elby in, and then we actually get the news that LeBron is ruled out. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, Green. Is Horton better than Elby? I think I would be willing to start the lineup and then start the lineup without THT and then pivot to THT if LeBron is ruled out, right? Because overall, his production and minutes are pretty modest to begin with, but we have seen him take a step forward in the offense when LeBron sits. So you could actually start your lineup without him. Wait for the LeBron James news since he's a game time decision. If he gets ruled out, then pivot to THT. I think that's an easy way to do it because it's obviously the same game. The salary is nearly identical, so you're not massively changing your lineup that way. So right now, I'm rolling with CJ. If LeBron is ruled out, I would take more shares of THT. I hope that answers it pretty clearly. I think that's what you're asking. So an interesting dynamic, obviously, in a smaller slate where there are less pivots away from players, especially when we have 3 games that all of a sudden have a ton of injury news that are all West Coast games. We're getting all this injury news that Minnesota has all these players listed as okay. So Anthony Davis is now listed as probable. I guess that's good. We have LeBron and Westbrook listed as game time decisions. We have all of these players for Minnesota being listed as questionable. So if they're going to be ruled out, Jaden McDaniels, Malik Beasley, Jordan McLaughlin, like these are players, Jalen Noel, like these are players that could be elevated in overall importance because they're going to be without a number of their starters. I think this is also a spot where I'd be willing to go back to Karl-Anthony Towns. I know he didn't have the best game last night, but this is still a favorable matchup for him. It still features 2 teams in the top 7 of the league when it comes to offensive pace. So I'd be willing to go back to Karl-Anthony Towns after what is ultimately, a modest performance from last night. How do I feel about Jaden McDaniels? His minutes overall, I'm never super excited about them, but if we're going to be seeing some of the players from Minnesota ruled out, like that's the spot I'd be willing to go to him a bit more just because their rotation could be missing. How many players they've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players listed as questionable. So the minutes could be significantly elevated for Jaden McDaniels instead of, the mid 20s. Like he could be well over 30 and in the starting lineup if some of those players are ruled out. Grim is asking, who is your better 6-man play that you might want in your lineup as a non-starter tonight? Love this kind of question. Who are you looking to, for upside that also shouldn't be massively popular? Like you're looking to get, some good point per dollar value potentially. So Kevin Love and Kelly Oubre, I think, are great options, but they probably are both going to be pretty popular, and they're also not super cheap. So those are great options if they fit what you're looking for. Jonathan Kuminga would probably be next for the Warriors. We know that this game could certainly turn a little bit back and forth. Not a whole lot of defense being played from Utah right now, specifically without Rudy Gobert. We have seen them take a step back. So a 3-point spread, a 2-point spread, back and forth nature is always good. Jordan Clarkson always fits that mold. A player that can come off the bench, get hot. You always want that. This game I'm somewhat avoiding because we don't want to be having too much exposure to a 204 game. Devin Vassell would probably be somewhere on that list as well, a step behind Love and Oubre. If you're not worried about the salary or how popular they're going to be, I think Oubre and Kevin Love are by far number 1 and number 2. So that's where I'm ultimately going for this. Aaron is asking for upside, fade stars and scrubs for the 6 and 7K guys versus 10 and 4K. It depends on how many lineups you're running, right? If you're running one lineup, is a cash game, is a GPP? If you give me a little more info, I could answer that a little bit better. If you're running multiple lineups, I always like to have a little bit of variation where there's a clear path to getting the stars and scrubs tonight. But if you're looking to be different and you're rolling multiple lineups out, you could certainly go with a very balanced mid-range build. You're locking in guys that all have consistent minutes, consistent usage, high production, offensive usage, all these sorts of things. So the mid-range build is always viable on a nightly basis. It just depends on, how many lineups you're rolling out there. If push comes to shove, generally I lean towards the stars and scrubs build just because, that's how we see a line of lineups at the top of leaderboards shake out historically. We're always seeing, players that are $4,000 going for 35 plus, scoring, FanDuel points, whatever it might be. One lineup in a league for upside total, for total scored potential. So if you're going for the upside, one lineup, I think I would still lean with stars and scrubs. I think the value we have tonight is really solid where you can get this value in your lineup. I'm also a big fan of Kobe White tonight for the Bulls. This overall game environment, we know he's going to be starting 237 over under. So this is where I'm starting off with some of my value. I don't hate going to Isaac Okoro for Cleveland. I think I'll have less interest in him specifically if we do see Garland play. Obviously, Min's salary for a starter is always good. We know his offensive upside is limited. So if you're going stars and scrubs and we see Garland ruled out, like this kind of start leaves you a lot of flexibility when it comes to who you want to be prioritizing. You want to get to LaMelo Ball, awesome. You want to get to DeRozan, awesome. You're worried about LeBron sitting and you want to prioritize Anthony Davis, totally viable. You're still left with 6,800. You have three players between Ball, DeRozan, and Davis that all legitimately have 60-point upside. You're locking in starters. They're all going to be playing 30-plus minutes or so. Maybe Okoro is the odd man out, but White, Elby, and Winslow should all be playing 30-plus minutes. DJ's asking, is Scottie Barnes a good value play over Keldon Johnson and Darius Baisley? Also, should I stay away from Otto Porter Jr.? So I like Scottie Barnes. I like Scottie Barnes to win the Rookie of the Year. Do I love him tonight? He's okay tonight. I love his ability to fill up the stat sheet, but ultimately, again, this game environment at 204 is just far less exciting than a game at 217. And if you can look to get up to Otto Porter, who's in a game with a 224 over under and now a 1.5 point spread, I would look to go to him. I would prefer Keldon Johnson ahead of Darius Baisley and Scottie Barnes. But if I have to choose between Baisley and Barnes, I would choose Scottie Barnes. So there's like a lot of good options in that list. I would prefer Porter if you can get up to any of them just because of the game environment. But if you're staying a little bit lower in terms of salary, I would take Keldon Johnson. We just want this stronger game environment. Darius Baisley is a great play tonight. I don't know about a great play tonight. Let's see what he's projected for. Baisley. 34 minutes, 29 FanDuel points, like slightly undervalued. His $6,000 salary has jumped up a little bit, over the past few games, specifically with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander out. I liked him a bit more when he was, 52, 5,500, $6,000, going up against, I would say, a surging Toronto team in a game with a 204 over under and a 10-point spread, isn't my favorite. I think he's a good play tonight. I wouldn't say a great play tonight. So I think he was in a good amount of my builds I did in the optimizer. This was before all of this injury news, so obviously that's going to change. But I know I want to be limiting not only him, but my exposure to all of the players in this game. I don't want to be taking too many shares of any of them. That's just the way I do things. I don't want to be focusing on a game with a 204 over under. So things will probably change, obviously, with the optimizer, with all of these players being listed as questionable, removing some, prioritizing Anthony Davis a bit more because he's listed as probable, with LeBron and Westbrook being listed as game time decisions. So that's where I'm going with things. I want to be getting up to DeRozan, Ball, and Vucevic. And Anthony Davis now. Those are obviously the top four stars on tonight's slate, and getting to a lot of the value that we have from Portland. We have value from Minnesota, or we potentially have value from Minnesota. What would their starting lineup look like if they have all these players ruled out? So Beverly, who's the list again? Beverly, Edwards, Russell, Beverly, Naz Reid, Josh Koji, Prince, all listed as questionable now, which is fantastic. So Malik Beasley at 5,500. If all those players are ruled out, I would immediately be prioritizing Malik Beasley and McDaniels. Almost certainly going to be in the starting lineup. I would assume we would have one of McLaughlin or Jalen Noel as the starting point guard. If Noel's the starting point guard at $3,500, that's absolutely a spot you want to be going up against Sacramento. They don't play any defense. Sacramento, bottom 10 in the league against point guards this year when it comes to the most FanDuel points allowed per game. Again, two teams in the top 7 when it comes to offensive pace. So Minnesota could be a massive source of value tonight if these players are all ruled out. So Beasley, 55, Jordan McLaughlin, 51, McDaniels, 43, Noel, 3,500. Like, there is a lot of value. Obviously, the issue is that this game is at 10 p.m., and we won't have that news by 7 p.m. lineup lock. Grim is asking, Jordan Poole, Gary Trent, or Terry Rozier. In that group, I would prioritize Rozier, Poole, Trent in that order, taking that, game environment, scoring upside, all those sorts of things. We do see Gary Trent hitting a lot of threes as of late, which is, of course, great. He doesn't always fill up the stat sheet. I have a little bit more faith in Terry Rozier to get that done. And Poole with no Klay Thompson for Golden State is always an option. Aaron is saying, so like Vooch and Winslow better than Barnes and Nurkic for upside potential tonight. Yes, I'm going to Vucevic and Winslow like 10 times out of 10 ahead of Barnes and Nurkic for tonight. As I said on today's podcast, Vucevic is one of my favorite players on the entire slate. This matchup against Charlotte is so good. They are the fourth most FanDuel points allowed per game to opposing centers. This is a pace-up spot for Chicago. They are 16th. Charlotte is sitting up at 2. We see this game with a 237 over-under and a 2-point spread. Everything we possibly want from a DFS environment lies with Chicago and Charlotte. So if we're talking about players between those two teams and Toronto and Oklahoma City, like this has an over-under that's over 30 points higher. So I'm going to be leaning on this game 10 times out of 10. Now, of course, you can get players in this game that are A, not popular, and B, can still go for 30 or 40 points. Like Siakam going for 40 points is not out of the question, even with a 204 over-under. But him getting 40 points is good. Is him getting 60 points in this game realistic? Like, no, like it's more realistic that we would see 60-point performances out of the Chicago and Charlotte game just because there's so many possessions back and forth, so many more possessions, so many more rebounds, assists, points, everything is just significantly higher in Charlotte and Chicago tonight. So that's where I'm leaning. It's going to be these teams. It's going to be these teams specifically with a lot of value potential for Minnesota. Oh, you mean Sacramento with Harrison Barnes? Oh, I thought you meant Scottie Barnes. So Harrison Barnes. Yeah, so a little bit of clarity on this with Harrison Barnes for Sacramento. Oh, totally. Like I said, this game is going to be awesome for fantasy production. And yes, limited availability with the roster due to the trades. He's going to be in the starting lineup. Harrison Barnes is shooting over 40% from three-point range this year. Having a little bit of a later career resurgence for him, absolutely in play. So get to Harrison Barnes in this matchup. No more Halliburton in their lineup. We don't know who's going to be fully available for them due to this trade. So yeah, go to Harrison Barnes. Totally on board with that. All players in this game are going to be in play. I think we're going to see that game and this game as probably just massively popular overall. So to recap real quick, I took the over on Evan Mobley, 26.5 points, rebounds, assists combined for him. Love this matchup against San Antonio, pace up spot. That's points and assists. This is points, rebounds, assists combined. The over on Mobley, 26.5. I also took the Cavs minus 5.5, and I took the Bulls minus 2.5. Those are the 3 bets I made so far tonight. If we do see LeBron ruled out, well, let's see are there player props listed for Anthony Davis. 26 points for Anthony Davis right now. What's his points, rebounds, assists? Oh, Anthony Davis only 39.5 right now. And LeBron is listed as questionable. That could be a spot to maybe jump on before he gets ruled out and that line shoots up. All right, so that does it for today's Q&A show. Reminder, there is a Super Bowl Q&A show, 6 p.m. right here, same spot, going over some props for that game. As a reminder, every week, 4 p.m. right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Twitter page, you can find this show. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS_Tom. Until next time, good luck in your contests.